Yeah, bigger footy time, and we're through the buys, boys. We can officially say goodbye to the boys. Inspired there from JJ's Jason Derulo intro song a couple of weeks ago when he was on the solo pod. So thank you to NSYNC. I've got Link with me on the desk. JJ down from Geelong online, and Harlow is our work experience kid. 15-year-old on the decks today. So we welcome Harlow. He's in year 10. He goes to St. Joe's in Ferntree Gully and is a gun basketball and footballer. So Harlow, welcome to Bigger Footy, mate.
Thank you.
Mate, feel free to just come in with some hot takes. Don't hold back. JJ, did you do year 10 work experience anywhere? Link said it wasn't a thing in WA.
Yeah, I don't know. From memory, I don't think so. What I'd love the work experience superstars to do, or even Link or anyone, is I sat here on my own and I managed to get the audio actually embedded in the podcast. You guys are multi-million-dollar organisation, and you just hold the phone up to the camera. Like, is there any chance? Is there any chance you could actually embed the song in the show?
Yeah, we could do that in post-production.
Yeah, post-production, we can clean it up.
Yeah.
I love how Hunter's the first one you bring in, Patto. That's wonderful.
It sounds all right to do it your way, but I just would have thought Clubby Sports, the juggernaut that it is, you could sort of figure out someone to put it in there properly. But anyway, we should rip into some footy.
Hey, I'm worried. There's two divisions in the AFL now, JJ. There's a Div 1 with the first 9 sides and a Div 2 with the remaining 9 that, technically, when everyone does their ladder predictors, look like cannot make it from here. And this weekend's games, if you have a look at them, it's Div 1 v Div 2 in every game. We've got no Div 1 sides playing against each other.
Yeah, you'd have to go back through. This might be a task for you in between your actual job, but you'd have to go back through. It feels like this time of the year we get the separation a lot. I think in a way you might be able to reframe it and say that, I've heard plenty of people tell me that GWS can win the flag. Plenty of people want to tell you that the Dogs have got the best list and most talented list in footy and 2 of the best 3 players in the game. Plenty of picks for Fremantle to do some damage. So those teams are 9th, 7th and 6th. So you can reframe it and say, even though we're not getting the matchups we want this week, we're bound to get good matchups on the run in because we've got 9 teams who, look, I still think most of the teams from Adelaide in 3rd down to GWS, they're as likely to finish top 4 as they are be the team that misses the 8 altogether. And that's a really interesting aspect to the ladder on the run in. And just to correct you, not everyone does ladder predictors, Patto. Same people don't bother.
No, they don't. But look, now, you're right. There's going to be some big games on the way home for top 4 positions. And, as long as there's heat on the 9th side, there's going to be some big games when the Div 1 sides play against each other. Are we saying that Port Adelaide, Carlton, Sydney, are any of them a chance here, or are we putting the line through?
No chance, especially beyond. So Port Adelaide are 10th, but what are they? They're 2 games behind GWS plus an awful percentage. So they're effectively 3 games back, and they've got a trip to Brisbane this week. You'd imagine that's a loss. So I'm happy to pen everyone from Port Adelaide down. So you're spot on. It is certainly Division 1 versus Division 2, and hopefully those teams, hopefully your Melbournes and particularly Essendon, maybe even Sydney in a couple of weeks' time if they continue to lose. Hopefully they don't really think about 2026 because that's when you start to get games that just, we've witnessed some games over the past month that have been hard to watch, but when you've got teams that have got 5 or 6 guys who are getting surgery or who are not being played in their rightful position, that's when you get games that are hard to cop, Link.
Exactly. I'm just looking at the top 4. I feel like you can say this almost every year, but getting in the top 4 this year looks as important as almost ever. Like the Crows, if they have a home final, they win a home final, they can see themselves in a prelim. But just as quickly, if they're out of the top 4 and they're versing a red-hot Dogs in the first week of the finals, it's the difference between one game in the home and away season can effectively be the difference between a 3-week longer season at the end of all of it.
Well, let me go a step further. I think top 2. Now, Collingwood are locked locked and loaded, you'd imagine, in the top two because, of course, top two, you get the home qualifying final. So when you've got Brisbane and Adelaide in particular, and maybe Fremantle and maybe even Gold Coast in the hunt for top four and top two, like if you have a look at it, if the final started tomorrow, Adelaide are going to Brisbane in a qualifying final. Now, that's Brisbane are 4-goal favourites against Adelaide in Brisbane, but we go and flip that, and that game is in Adelaide. It's basically even Stevens, as we witnessed a few weeks ago. So getting a home qualifying final is massive. So there's getting in the top four to give yourself the security blanket, but even getting second position for Brisbane, Adelaide, or even Geelong is massive.
The one that immediately comes to mind after that, sorry, Patto, is 2019. The Eagles have come off a flag and they have a loss at the very end of their home and away season to Hawthorn. They beat Essendon in an elimination final quite comfortably, and then their premiership defence, they have to travel to Melbourne. The Cats knock them off, and their premiership dynasty ends right there. Yeah,
the margins are tight. Those elimination finals are going to be good standard games this year because I think, you're right. There is a lot of depth in the final sides. I think they're all a chance on their day. They're dangerous. It's based on matchup. Would you entertain a wild card weekend, JJ?
I don't know that we really need it. I accept the only reason I'd say yes is because I'm always aware of the fact that the game needs to continue to try things. I think we're the second worst industry in terms of sporting industries in terms of trying things. Horse racing is first and then daylight second. But, I mean, even the grand final, my views are, like, I love the grand final at 2:30 or whatever it is, 2:45. But also, why not try it at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 7 p.m. and if it works, then great. We've got a brand new product at 7 p.m. and we've got millions more people watching. But I think we're scared of, you know what, hand up, that didn't work. Next year we go back to what we know works. Like we're really scared to try stuff. So wildcard weekend, why not just try it? And if we don't like it and unanimously the competition and the fans are like, nah, we don't like it, just get rid of it.
Yeah. So would that would involve what 7th through to
7
10th?
to 10 really, if you wanted to have two games on the weekend. But I mean, do we really want to see Western Bulldogs versus Port Adelaide and then Gold Coast versus GWS? I don't know. I don't know. Like after 23 games or 24 games, you are what you are. I mean, if you're 12 and 12 or whatever, however many games we play these days, if your record is 500, do we really want to see you play another game anyway?
I think it tips into we've got 18 sides in the comp, and so the top 8 get rewarded. Once you go to 10, then it's technically mediocrity being rewarded with more teams in the bottom half. So I'm comfortable with where it is. I do like in other sports though where they have these wild card rounds because you get more meaningful games at the end of the year and more storylines for people trying to get into that play-in spot.
Speaking of innovation, I'd be much more inclined if I was running the AFL to have to change the grand final time slot than I would a wildcard weekend. I was at the 2021 grand final in Perth, and that was an unbelievable experience, but the game itself was awesome. The first half, Christian Petrarca's kicked his first goal along the ground dribbling, and he's almost getting sunburnt from this. And then when Luke Jackson's kicking goals in the last quarter, it's completely under the lights. So it was an awesome contrast between Perth made a difference as well, being warmer, I guess, but it's almost a half of footy in the sun and a half under lights, and it was awesome as a spectator.
What time did that one start?
From memory, it was 5 o'clock ish.
Yeah.
5 o'clock local and 7 o'clock Melbourne time. Was that about right? Maybe.
Yeah. I'm all for the twilight fixture. JJ, I saw
5:15 WA, 7:15 Melbourne. That one.
Yeah. I'd like them to push it back. There's only wins from it, I think.
And I think the year previous, I was on the Cats list when it was Geelong and Richmond, and that one from memory was a 5 p.m. or a 6 p.m. start as well. And I think now COVID forced people to stay home and watch them, but both were watched by massive numbers. So Anyway, we're just reluctant to try stuff in general. That's sort of my point here. Is we should be more open and more willing to saying we're going to have a go at something. I think the reason is people in positions of power are too scared to say it was my idea, it was wrong, it didn't work, because they feel like maybe their job's in jeopardy or whatever. I think we should always be looking to innovate and make change and be willing to say, had a go, didn't work, back to what we know does work.
For the record, I'm on board with the Twilight Grand Final. More time in the pubs, the home barbecues during the day, and then you still get the chance to celebrate at night. But I felt like those, definitely the Richmond-Geelong one, it was kind of over and you had to go to bed by the time, the match had finished. So, that's my preference. But anyway, JJ, I saw on SEN you had your Division 1 crunch time players, the top 9 sides, the most important player for each one of those sides. Can you just explain that one for us a little bit more? And I don't have to go through all 9, but maybe your favourite couple.
I'll bring it up. So it was what they call in the business a little bit of a content filler. But it was more, I took it as, it wasn't my idea, but I took it as just, if I'm a coach of a team, or a fan of a team, this is the player I really want to play well, and I took it as, so for Collingwood, I picked Darcy Moore, which is probably a little bit from left field, but I took it like, I know Nick Dacos is going to play well. I know Josh Dacos is going to play well. Who's the guy that is maybe a little bit more mercurial, who, if he plays well, I'm confident will win the premiership. So that's why I went a bit left field. That's why I picked Cam Rayner. It's easy to pick Lachie Neale, but I'm pretty sure Lachie Neale and Hugh McCluggage are going to play great footy. So if Cam Rayner has a massive final series, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. So that's why I went a little bit left field. Some were obvious, Sam Darcy, Jeremy Cameron, but I looked a little bit left field with Shea Bolton and Bailey Humphrey and even maybe Isaac Rankin.
No, I agree with that. I think there are those players that are integral, and Darcy Moore hasn't quite. He's not having the best year this year.
I reckon he's been all right this year. Yeah,
but in compare, like is he all Australian this year or not?
He wouldn't be all Australian. No.
But you're right. Like if he stands up in finals, then it's going to be very important. No, so I like that one. Why don't we get into some of the games? Do we want to go back to Thursday night and the mess over at Carlton?
Wow. Well, I'm trying to dig up some numbers because we know Carlton are the worst kicking team in the competition. It feels like in the past 2 or 3 weeks it's gotten worse. Don't you reckon it looked like? Don't you reckon some of McGovern's check side that missed by further than he actually kicked the footy? Curno's shot late in the game where he gets a mark, he runs in from 25 metres out and completely sprays it. Don't you reckon they now look like a team that's almost paralysed with the fear of what's sort of coming next and, a coaching overhaul and a regime overhaul and the criticism that's going to come and the question marks on, everyone? I saw Lee Montagna do a segment last night on Sunday night on First Crack called the Unreliable Five, so those types of things are starting to appear. It looked to me like a team who was paralysed by fear because you can't possibly turn up and not put in what you feel like is a big effort, right? Like it's a big stage. Surely they're turning up with effort. I just think they were paralysed through fear.
Yeah, I've been in a team where we had a lot of conjecture around Terry Wallace getting sacked, and it felt like that. You're not quite going as bad as what you are, but those little things just blow up and manifest and become worse. Yeah, and it had that. It's got that sort of vibe to it at the moment, which I don't. Yeah, internally you just worry about what's going through the players' heads.
Well,
because the performance was clearly substandard.
Oh, it was, and Port Adelaide are no world beaters. Let's not forget that. So they made Port Adelaide look like the best team in footy. So it's that vicious cycle. The players have got to now. And I reckon you do think this stuff during the game. I reckon you do think about these things during the game. It's 50-10. The cameras are going to be there Monday. What am I going to, how am I going to put up with all these journos and this vicious cycle again of Cameras every time I walk into the club. Cameras every time I walk out of the club. You know, going down the street to do my groceries and get my coffees, and people are staring at me and people are talking at me. That's just can be a vicious cycle of being a part of an underperforming club. Unfortunately, that's just a reality.
And they've got the Pies Friday night, so
it's the worst possible.
It's going to be interesting.
It really is.
If things get messy there,
and they got Brisbane the week after.
Yeah, I saw some stat. I mean, Voss's record has been pretty good in comparison to the previous 5 years before he got there. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. But I mean, what's is he contracted till
end of next year? I think
end of next. Yeah.
Why? You know how we often hear about the Carlton money men, or the shadowy figures, or the people of influence behind the scenes. Why have they never really been brought to life? Why have they never really been named in terms of these are the people that get referenced? Because don't you feel like it feels like it's in the walls at Carlton? Like it feels like it's an intangible like toxicity almost that exists at the club, that they just can't get over it. I mean, we're talking about what is supposed to be, and it's quite laughable. You say, well, Carlton are a powerhouse. Well, I mean, they don't look like a powerhouse to me. They haven't been, they haven't really been a relevant team for any good reason for, 25 years or whatever it is. They haven't won a premiership or been in a grand final since 95 and 99. So are they really a powerful team, or are they a club that's potentially run by some people behind the scenes who we don't even know their names?
It's always been an issue. Like there was, a few billionaires behind the scenes pulling too many strings. I thought they'd tidied a lot of that up with the new regime, but interesting. Well, it's a watch this space. I think there's clearly going to be some player movement, but it's always fun when there's one club under the microscope like this. It just makes for good drama.
Well, the problem is it seems to be Carlton more often than not. Before we move on, I'll give you the two names that, because, the names that came up overnight were, McGovern and Williams and Sard. These guys aren't getting you anything in return. You might be getting some money off the books. Walsh and Mackay are the two, and I've brought up Mackay on our pod a fair bit. He's the one, I reckon, that will get you something in return. It'll get you $900,000 off your books, and he's got to be worth a first round pick, doesn't he? I mean, he's a 6'7" Coleman Medal winner who has played some okay games this year when he's been out there. So in a new environment, in a potentially better team that moves the ball and understands how to use him a bit better, surely he could fetch a first round pick.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Hawks, would Brisbane take him? I think there's definitely be some suitors for sure, and they're just a couple of sides at the top of the ladder. There's going to be others. He's
a one-time All-Australian, made the squad twice, led the goal kicking at the Blues 3 times. Does he get? He was a top 10 pick. He's won a Coleman Medal, so he's clearly a very good footballer. But is it fair to put him in the same conversation as a Charlie Kerner, as a Sam Walsh? Is he just? We say this about teams. Like, is he just what he is, or is he underperforming?
I just feel like he might benefit, and they might benefit from a change of environment. I think he is what he is. Like he's a really solid. I don't think he's a match winner. Is he? It's fair to say. And now that's.
He can be on his day, but you wouldn't expect that more than.
It's not a criticism of him. There aren't a lot of match winners getting around. That you can just pick up off the street. But I think he's a really solid AFL player. And again, he's played in a team over the past couple of years that has been underperforming when it comes to kicking the ball and using the ball inside forward 50. So I just think it might be a real win-win situation for Brisbane, who now I think Brisbane might have to use their pick for an academy player or whatever, or a father's son. But if Brisbane, so they finish second on the ladder, pick 17, gets pushed back however many picks, surely Brisbane would be willing, if they don't land Oscar Allen, to give up their end of first round pick for Harry Mackay, which probably solves their Joe Danaher issues. Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense on both fronts, I think.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have currency. Walsh, I looked up last week after we spoke about it, and he's only 25 or 26. So I'd be reluctant to part with him, but you definitely get
24.
It back. 24, there you go.
Yeah, but he's 24.
Turns 25 in 2 days.
With a sore back.
He's 25 going on 32, I reckon. He's had some injuries that make you really nervous about his longevity in the game. And we all, anyone who says that hopes they're wrong. We don't say it hoping it comes true. You say it hoping it doesn't come true. But he's had some issues that would make you nervous and would make a potential buyer nervous, I reckon. Yep.
Should we move on to Dogs and Swans? Best game for the round?
Well, except for the surface at the SCG, which was always fantastic. I loved playing at the SCG, but I tell you what, that was diabolical. I sent a message to you boys. So Sydney and Fremantle, Tom Chadwick, the media manager, the media guru at the Swans, has already come out and declared the game will be there. I'm not sure how you can guarantee it'll be there because it's supposed to pour rain this week. The Bomb are telling us, I think 80, 90, 100 mils of rain during the week. So maybe if it pours rain, it'll actually be better because it'll be really sticky and quite muddy and you won't be able to slip around. But I think there should be a punishment. So, okay, SCG, if you declare this ground fit for AFL footy and someone slips over and hurts themselves, then you'll be liable for whatever the punishment should be or the financial payout or whatever, because we saw a lot of slipping over. But the Bailey Williams, I don't know if you boys can remember the Bailey Williams scenario. That was dangerous. He was in a really vulnerable position, A, with his feet, but B, in terms of the way the top half of his body was contorting and whether he gets knocked out or taken, by an arm that doesn't expect his top half of his body to be there because he's slipping and sliding around. So if you want to tell us it's fine and you want to send Fremantle there to play, and if it's not fine and someone gets hurt, you deserve to pay the price.
Well, we need an employment lawyer. I remember when I was at the AFL Players Association and there was a lot of stuff with Marvel going on and ground inspections.
It was a Brisbane player who did his ACL on the AstroTurf on the side.
On the AstroTurf on the side. So I think that the PA will no doubt be having a look at it this week. But yeah, I mean, there's always liabilities and everything that people sign. But you're right, it didn't look like it was in good condition. But moving a ground, it's not that simple. There's so many other ramifications. Last thing we want is players getting injured, though. Swans, I thought Swans were good. I think I wouldn't write there. I can see them getting on a bit of a run and trying to challenge Div 1 status, but I'm not holding out any hope. It was a great celebration for Bont. It got me thinking, and I don't know why we even need to do this, but if you had to...
Comparison is the thief of joy, as they say.
Yes, exactly. If you had to compare Marcus Bontempelli and Scott Pendlebury's career, who are you taking? I'll quickly run through the numbers. Obviously, 250 games for Bont, 420 for Pendles, but Bont's got 1 flag, Pendles 2. Bont has 3 MVPs award, best player voted by the players. Pendles 1 Norm Smith. The 3 best captains for Bont, 2 best captains for Pendles. They've both got 6 All-Australians. Bont's got 6 BNFs and Pendles has 5 BNFs. But both come to mind as similar type of players. They're going to be legends of their club. Very similar, smooth movers. No Brownlows for both of them.
Yet.
Who are you taking?
Link, you go first.
I said pre-show to Patto I would reluctantly take Marcus Bontempelli as the better player, but Scott Pendlebury, well, he was best on ground on Saturday night as a... How old is he? 30. As a 37-year-old, he was the best player on the ground on Saturday night. Yeah, and when the Eagles, when they were right in the game, he stood up. He was just gliding through traffic as he's done for 20 years. So, reluctantly Marcus Bontempelli, but Scott Pendlebury has had an unbelievable career. It's probably both of them are going to be a little bit unlucky to not go down as premiership captains. So, Pendlebury was the AFLPA's best captain in 2022. Gives up the captaincy. Darcy Moore takes them to that 2023 flag. He is the captain, obviously, in A-team when they lose narrowly. And Bontempelli, similarly, lost the grand final as captain in 21 and then was a young player in the 2016 side. So it's probably one thing they probably almost both deserve that they don't have on their resume.
How long after the 2010 flag did Pendlebury become captain? Was it? Because Maxwell was the skipper, wasn't he? And
2014 to 2022 was Pendlebury.
Okay, so there was a few years there. So, I mean, I think you'd say Bontempelli. You're splitting hairs, so, you're taking either. But you'd say Bontempelli, but then in 3 months' time, or whatever it is, it might be 3 premierships to 1. So, that's a pretty big carrot to switch sides of the fence. So, I reckon you'd take Bontempelli. I think he's been, when you just line up the 800 players, at the start of the year for however many years, I think you're probably always picking Bont before Pendles. If you're just saying best to worst player in the competition, I reckon you'd always pick Bont before you'd pick Pendles. But, I mean, again, don't take that as a criticism for Pendlebury because he mightn't be picked before Bont, but he's not getting picked much later.
It's just good pub chat, good banter, isn't it? But what do we think of Stephen May, Tom Lynch, a couple of incidents from the weekend?
Yeah. Well, Stephen May was okay. He got off that. It looked a more innocuous one than the Tom Lynch situation. I called that game, Adelaide and Richmond, and what I want to say about, I almost put a tweet out, but I thought, well, we're about to jump on the pod, so I'll save it. Adam Uze spoke about, he feels like he gets held a lot. I don't think he does. I think it's not a cop-out, but it's what he feels. So you can't tell Tom Lynch how he feels. So I don't reckon other forwards who use their, athleticism a bit more would feel like they get held because they're running and they're jumping. And if they are getting held, it's really obvious because they're in that, that running and jumping motion. But Lynchy now, because he's a bit older and he's not as mobile, I reckon he feels like he's getting held a lot because he's engaged in a wrestle and he's engaged in a scuffle and he's always tangled up and he's probably giving as good as he's getting. But as, anyone who's played the game knows, you always feel like you're getting held more than you're holding your opposition. So I don't buy into the fact that it was something that eventuated because he was getting held all day. Now, I always, when I'm on radio, I always quickly get my eyes ahead of the ball, versus watching where the ball is at all times. I always try and get ahead of the game and look at the forwards and the backs because often you can see the movement or the pattern or the holding that may or may not be there. And Butts plays incredibly closely. He was taught by Daniel Talia, who's a human glove. So he plays tight, and I'm not saying maybe there wasn't 1 or 2 free kicks there, but I just reckon that was half a, I won't call it a cop-out, but it was a misplaced sentence, I reckon, from Adam Uze to say that, potentially he flared up because he was getting held all day, because I don't think he was.
He plays angry, like he plays with the bee in his bonnet. He's always done that. So, yeah, you're right. As you get a bit older, your side's not as good. I clearly hate it when, especially with playing as a forward sometimes, don't kick it on my head. Kick it out an advantage, 15 metres to one side. Let me run and jump at it. I feel like some of the entries at the moment that he's getting versus what he used to get. And he used to play that role in the premiership sides where it was bang it in and bring it to ground, let the smalls get to work. But, yeah, it was a bad look. It was interesting, Jack Rewalt's comments around how we should go up to Gold Coast with Dimmer.
I was just about to say that. He wouldn't get a game with the Suns.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, it depends if King's there next year.
He hadn't touched the ball. This is the other part, right? So you can say he's frustrated because he feels like he's being held. I reckon he's more frustrated because he hadn't touched the ball. He had not had a disposal at that point in the game. So I think the frustration stems from that, not from the fact that he feels like he's being held. So, like people go out of their way to tell you how good a fella he is, and I think when people do that, you know that he must be a good dude. But you can't have that on the field. If that lands in a different manner and Butts gets knocked out, and it looked like he struck him more than he did in when it was live. I was watching it live, and it looked like he struck him worse than he did. He's very lucky he didn't, because if he did, he'd be serving 8 to 10 weeks. So even though he didn't get knocked out, he shouldn't get off it or get away with 2 or 3 weeks because he got lucky that the victim didn't get injured. So I reckon he gets 5, maybe 4.
Yeah. As a Richmond fan, you'd be sitting there thinking, well, Lynchy, you should stay and just finish your time out at the club. We looked after him with a big trade, front-ended a lot of his deal.
He's not gone, mate.
They've seen a lot of premiership players walk out, in their prime. If do you think he owes it to the Richmond to stay and play the years out?
I saw yesterday he signed a 7-year contract for the Tigers when he left the Suns. So that's 2019 to 2025. We speak a lot of people getting offered too long a contract. That sounds like it's the perfect length contract because I almost think 7 years you've won a couple of flags, you've been there for a year, you've been there for a year while Harry Armstrong's been coming through their draftee. I reckon it's just a perfectly timed contract, shake hands and move on.
Particularly when you have to, I reckon when you've got to pull a captain of a club, which is what he was when he left. If you've got to pull him out of the club, you'd expect to maybe have to tack on a year or 2 or 3, longer than you'd really like. So I think there's an argument you could. Your point's right. There's an argument he wouldn't get a game in some teams, but there's also an argument with better supply that he'd perform better. So, they apparently want him to go on next year, but I think they want him to play more because of the kids that he's protecting versus the fact that he's performing well. So, either way, he's got some time on the sidelines.
What do we make of Dan Curtin in that game, JJ? I know he's one of your favourites.
He's emerging. He was an interesting draft pick. Link, you'll probably know a bit about it. He was drafted as an intercepting key defender. Had a massive season as a WA boy as a key defender. Really good interceptor. He's got great size. I reckon he was about 193 or 4 when he got to the Crows. Now they say 197. He spent some time back. He didn't work for him. We all jumped the gun and thought, oh, gee, is this the second coming of Fisher Mackesy? Then he went forward and he looked okay, but didn't look natural. Now he's out on the wing, and yesterday or Sunday he was enormous. He had 26 disposals, was just taking the game on. Understand, Richmond are struggling. Had great combination for a winger. So he had 11 score involvements, but he had 8 intercept possessions as well. So he's getting back and intercepting the footy, playing his part in defence, but then he was kick-starting and catapulting a lot of offence for them with the 11 score involvements. Kicked 2 really good goals. He's got great size. He's just I reckon once they start to, and this might be the breakout game that makes everyone realise and makes his teammates realise, you see Dan Curtin on the wing against basically anyone, just kick it there and he'll probably win it.
Yeah.
So he was pick 8 in the 2023 draft, and in that draft was when North Melbourne picked McKercher, Dersma. The Eagles also obviously had Harley Reid with pick 1. There was talk about, are they going to go back and split their picks so they can get him? There was a lot of media chat about Alistair Clarkson loves him. That would have to be a little bit of a chip on the shoulder if you're Curtin. He slipped to pick 8. So he's had a team in his home state and then a Victorian team both go against picking him or trading back or whatever. He goes to the Crows and he plays 7 games in his first year, and as you said, he's played a number of positions. Playing his junior footy, I know he played forward a lot for his school in Perth in a really good team. Then he's played half back for Claremont and for WA. But when you come into an AFL system and you're 197, you're not taller than Riley Thilthorpe, you're not taller than Taylor Walker. They don't need him to play as their full forward. So it's allowed him to just, here's a role for you. You don't need to be our number 1 key forward. You can play 14 games on a wing like he has this year, and he's just settled into his season really well. Yeah.
And I see a couple of teams trying to play to have someone even go back and stop the intercept marker from the other team. Like, I think he could do that against Geelong and even go back and play under Tom Stewart, but it's working well on a wing.
I mean, I thought he was the best player, or he was, across the course of the game, he was the most influential player. I think I end up giving Thilthorpe 3 votes because I'm a little bit prone to the big forwards, but he kicked, I think Thilthorpe kicked 2 in the last to get himself to 5 goals. But over the course of the game, Curtin was the most influential player on the ground. On reflection, I should have given him the 3 votes. But Yeah, he's just a weapon. They've got a few weapons now. You know, Rankin's a weapon who's probably just going at the moment, 7.5 out of 10. We know Dawson, he did some stuff aerially that was quite frightening and quite dangerous for the opposition as well. Their backs are holding up. That's my query. I'm yet to really be convinced that their tall backs can hold up against, a Jesse Hogan in a knockout final. Or a big forward who can do some damage in a final. So that's the only part that worries me. The rest of their game looks pretty good.
I'm feeling good about my premiership pick. A few weeks ago on the pod, I started with the Giants, so you could choose one side, but if you jump off, you can't get them back. I started with the Giants, and then they spluttered, and I moved over to Adelaide. JJ's got Brisbane, Moff's got Collingwood, Link, Harlow. If you had a team to pick now for the rest of the year.
Does that mean I get Collingwood by default if I'm filling in for Moff for the next couple of months?
No, you can either take them or you can go out on a limb right now and pick another side if you think the Premier is coming from a team other than Brisbane, Collingwood or Adelaide. What do you reckon, Harlow?
I'd love to say Geelong.
You're a Geelong man.
Oh, that's a good... Geelong are the sleeping giant, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay, well, you stay on the fence there, Link.
I'll stay on the fence.
we mentioned Rankin then.
I think Collingwood are winning it, so
okay. Yeah, that's all right. You can have the pies. We mentioned Rankin then. Is he... Who's the best small forward in the AFL at the moment? If you had a pick out of Rankin, Cozzy Pickett, Tyson Stengel, Shea Bolton, Jack Higgins, Paul Curtis... who else am I missing?
Can we narrow the criteria a little bit? So when you say the best small forward, so Cozzy Pickett, who else did you say? Some of them go and play a fair bit in the midfield, which I reckon makes life difficult for a Stengel or a Curtis who don't get those opportunities. So, or even a Jack Higgins. So
Rankin and Bolton would go in the midfield.
Yep, and Cozzy Pickett does. He basically goes to every centre bounce now.
Nick Watson had a couple of CBAs on the weekend.
Yeah.
Who did?
Nick Watson.
Yeah, kicked a nice goal out of the centre bounce and celebrated accordingly. If you break it down into the two different types, so those that call them mid forwards who go to CB and then go forward, it's hard to go past Cozzy Pickett, I reckon. But if you're talking just the more stay at home, small forwards who play close to goal and sort of average 1.5, 2 goals a game. For consistency, I'd go Paul Curtis, and in a one-off game, in a one-off grand final, I reckon of the smalls again, I might go Nick Watson for that X factor that could maybe kick me 4 1/4 and win me a game.
Yeah. Well, we spoke about last week how good the young key forwards are in the comp at the moment. And, I think there's plenty of great small forwards too. So I think we're in healthy shape there.
Well, I've given it. Can you guys sort of offer up an answer or not?
I like Jack Higgins. I feel like as a smart forward, Jack Higgins, old crazy Jack.
Jackie boy.
I like him. I'd probably say out of those players that we've listed, though, I would say Isaac Rankin's the best player. But, he's more a mid forward. And I'd have Shea Bolton second.
If my team's playing in a grand final tomorrow, I'm picking Shea Bolton.
Yeah.
He hasn't really ripped... He's had a couple of games for this year. He had three goals and 24 touches against the Giants in a big win for them. 3 goals and 20 against Gold Coast in another big win, both away from home. I think if I'm a defender, the player I'm most nervous about playing on in a big final would have to be Shea Bolton.
Yeah, agree.
I think that's a good call.
No one's mentioned Jamie Elliott's got 37 goals. So
he's more getting it off the mark, though, isn't he?
He's a sort of separate
Fritsch type,
tiny full forward. I mean, we're blessed. Talls and smalls, we're in a really good space for forwards in the game. I think Josh Rochelli's got the capability of getting there. Toby Green for a long time's had the mantle. Yep. Riley West's a pretty good player. I think Seth Campbell at Richmond shows some signs of being a pretty good player. He's a good ball user. Bailey and Rayner, if you want to call them medium-sized forwards. Archie, Charlie Cameron's had that mantle for a while as well. So I just hope the game continues to cater not cater. We don't have to set the game up so that the forwards kick goals, but it'd be a shame if a lot of these young key forwards and small forwards don't get plenty of opportunities to bring people to the footy.
I actually think the stand the mark rule has been really good for footy.
It has.
Do we all agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't. People who you shouldn't say this type of stuff and say that people don't know what they're talking about. But honestly, people who bag the stand rule in terms of what it has done for the game don't understand the game and ball movement and the flow of the ball because the player on the mark can't guard the mark. I just think people who criticise it, and whether the audio of the umpire saying stand annoys you, then you're easily irritated, I think. But in terms of actual flow and where you can kick the ball, it's been great.
Yeah. But people are usually resistant to change, and
Thank
it's
you.
the ticky touchwood stuff when they pay the 50s is what drives people mad. But it actually is good for the game. It helps break open the team defence that was starting to dominate. So, but moving on, North Melbourne. We just want to chat about Clarko's comments off the back of that one.
Yeah, so
They're frustrating. If I was a North supporter out there, geez, I'd be unsure on which team's going to show up.
well, no team. So Sydney got beaten by 100 odd in Adelaide late last year. They made a grand final, right? So no team. I don't think any team is. I think the common narrative has been, I thought North were past this. No team's really past, a thumping on a bad day. Like if you turn up with the wrong mindset or half your team's got the flu or whatever, I don't think anyone's, anyone's free of getting bashed up on any given day. But Clarko after the game said that I don't think we'll forensically go into it. We've had a big month. They were coming off the bye. They look like they're covering the ground a bit better. Now go and find the actual quotes if you want to, but I was blown away by that. Because okay, you want to give them a pass. I don't agree with it, but what happens if the Dogs blow them away on Thursday night? Now where are we? Are we giving them another pass, or are we doing what we should have done last week and we're going to dive into it?
Yeah. Well, you were down there, Link. Was it just that bloody cold?
It wasn't actually that bad from the stands, but I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I might.
How
have
were
been
you doing down
bit,
there?
Bit protected from the wind. I was just watching my boys.
Just
Watch
thought
your
you'd
space.
get
There's
pants.
a new little content stream happening over on the
We've
Footy
got
and Friends channel.
Mac and I have got something in the works for a couple,
okay.
which will come out in a couple of weeks. Also played for Georgetown earlier that day, so shout out to those boys.
I heard you dominated 2 goals, dynamic key forward.
Two goals as an undersized key forward at the start of the game.
With the George, is this part of the content stuff too? Is it the playing?
Yeah, we had someone hit us up and asked if we wanted to play, and we said, "Yep,
Wow.
sure can."
Yeah. Tassie
Nice.
footy. What was the standard like?
It was not as free flowing and space and clean as I'm used to in Perth. It was about 90% of the players around the ball, and then one bloke at each end.
Yeah. Okay.
So not really my style, but it was good fun nonetheless.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then the other part I had here on my list was, what gets you up as a fan more? A big chase down tackle from a key forward like a Josh Tracy or Mabiel Chol did on the weekend, or it's probably different when it's a debutant like Alex Tarou coming in and just absolutely killing a ball with a spoil, 30-metre spoil, punching it into the stands. What gets you up as a fan more?
I don't care whether you've played 1 game or 100 games. I'm not going to get excited over a spoil.
Yeah, that's the right answer.
14 spoils is fantastic. Can we turn a few of those into marks next time? That'd be great. I don't know. Yeah, the rundown's great. I've never experienced being on the right side of one of those, so I'm sure it feels fantastic to run someone down like Josh Tracy did.
I did in under 15s and never forget it. I just started off a chase, 20 metres behind, and then the guy stuffed around with the ball, and it was just perfect. Right place, right time.
I did it in an intra-club for the Crows once, and it set a standard that I could never get back to.
I got chased down once on the G by Jason Blake. I was out there
Galloping,
having a few bounces. Didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I had no one to kick to.
Blake.
But it's the only time I've ever got run down. I'd like to think my awareness
all
behind.
the opponents.
Yeah. But, the chase down tackle.
There's
Josh
no worse
Tracy,
feeling when you're the only person in the entire stadium who doesn't know that someone's right on their hammer.
I can't believe now Jason Blake, fantastic player, could play anywhere, back, ruck, forward, not blessed with speed.
No, so that's saying something. Oh, Neil, he's my premiership teammate
please
too.
find that vision.
Uni Blacks. They called him Neil, like Neil Armstrong, bit of a space cadet, but
really?
Highly intellectual. Other thing we wanted to talk about, it's been a bit negative. The footy's been shit, cold months. I was starting to think back, like we've obviously through the middle part of the year now. What is the best games of the year that you reckon we've seen so far? And I'm sure there'll be a couple more to add to this list. Maybe not in Div 1v2 round coming up this week, but top 5 games of the year, Link. What do you reckon?
I've got my 5. I'll whip through these very quickly. At 5, I've got Freo and Collingwood in Perth on that Thursday night. A lot of this was because of the animosity of the Freo crowd. The Pies rested 4 players going into that game. It was the week after Freo had that horror loss to the Saints. And when Luke Ryan and Jordan Clark are kicking it to each other, switching it around, the crowd was booing, and it was just an unbelievable atmosphere. And then when Collingwood came over the top, it was awesome. Going for the Pies that game. Number 4, I've got Tigers. Richmond's win over the Blues in round 1.
Yeah,
that was just something that no one saw coming. And Sam Lawler and that wave of Richmond youthful exuberance, if you will, to get them over the line was awesome. At 3, I've got the Giants getting the job over Geelong. Down in Geelong again. That was a thriller. I got the Suns and the Crows from earlier this year. The Mac Andrew Riley Thilthorpe was awesome to watch. And I think comfortably the best game of the year is the Cats getting the job done over Collingwood. Collingwood's second loss of the season, where Jack Crisp broke the record for the most games consecutive, and he beat Jim Stein's record. 245th consecutive game, and he had the shot after the siren to win it and missed it. It was just an awesome game, and hopefully we see a rematch of that one in September.
Very good.
Yeah, nice.
I think Richmond Carlton is definitely going to be memorable for all those reasons. It's a bit of a shock, but yeah, standard of games. I don't disagree. I think the other ones you mentioned were really good. Is there any others, JJ, you'd add to that?
I took it from games I've been to. I reckon I've called about 20 games this year. Some hand in the air. I've been off the TV, but I've been to games as well. I reckon that Giants Geelong game's the best game I've been to live in a fair while. 105 to 101. So we see both teams kick, plenty of goals, 30 goals in the game. And Jesse Hogan had 22 disposals, 9 marks, and kicked 7 in that game. So that'd be the best game I've seen live this year. Hopefully, we see a few that can top it.
Yeah. The other one was maybe that Geelong Dogs one. The Bailey
that
Smith
was I was at that game
was
too.
good
Yeah.
too.
Yep, that's number 6, I reckon.
Yeah. Best clubman time. I've got a bit of a different take on it. I don't know if everyone heard the Hayden Skipworth, assistant coach of Collingwood. Yep. I think the best clubman side might need a coach.
Okay.
And when I heard that Scott Selwood was away and all the stuff that had happened with the Selwoods and the tragedy there, looking after his car and going to get it cleaned and detailed and filled up with petrol, that was best clubman areas 101. So I'm going to go a bit off field here. And Hayden Skipworth to be the coach of the best clubman side.
Nice. Did Miles Berg? Did I nominate Miles Bergman last week? I can't remember.
Tom Green won it last week.
That was my nomination, and he got around it too. He got around the nomination. So Turbo Tommy, smack him in the centre. He's playing. Who am I going to go with? I'm looking toward. I think Ben Long's already in the team, isn't he?
He's been nominated. I don't think he made it. No,
I've got one if you want to have a think, JJ. Funnily enough, I almost just gave him a drive-by, but I've got Jordan Clark this week.
Yep.
Almost sounds a bit critical of me saying him and Luke Ryan chipping it around each other, and that's probably something they have done a bit in the past. But he had 31 possessions yesterday, kicked a goal. He took a really clutch mark in that last quarter. So he's had the 31 touches and the 10 marks, but if you're just looking through the stats on the Monday, if you didn't watch the game, you go, oh, that'd be 10 uncontested marks. But he stood up when his team needed him to. He was probably the only docker that was really consistent across the 4 quarters, 517 metres gained. And then post-match, when he's getting interviewed, he spoke about Luke Jackson.
Yeah.
He was a bit flat. They didn't really get into it, but they said he was a bit flat during the week. He's had some stuff going on. Yeah. And he basically just said at halftime, himself and a lot of the Freo players just got around him and said, mate, we back you in, we support you. And he himself got into the game late and was really important. So Jordan Clark is my nomination.
Nice. Spent a couple of years with Clarkey. He's a good kid, so it's good to see him playing great footy, as in maybe all-Australian half-backer at the end of the year. So, yeah, he's going super. Deserves probably a few more tags if you're the opposition. Hello. I'll put it on the agenda. Braden Campbell did a great job on Bailey Dale in the second half last week, so maybe Campbell can go to Jordan Clark. That'd be a good idea. Someone should tell Dean Cox. I'm going to go with Sam Darcy. No, Sean Darcy. I knew I would get that wrong.
The big boy.
The big boy, Sean Darcy,
the other
number
big boy.
4 for the Purple Power. He's been criticised a lot. Now, not sometimes when you say, this person's been criticised, it's from one person and it's from Kane. But more people than that have queried his role in the team, and it's been, I reckon, a bit awkward for everyone involved because Jackson has been so prominent and dominant when he's been the number 1 ruckman. But Darcy has a role to play in that team. Their record continues to be successful when both guys are in the team. Marshall played well, but when the chips were down, the Freo big boys got to work. Darcy had 17 disposals, 41 hitouts, and kicked a goal. So, and I think he kicked that goal in the last quarter, Link, from memory.
Yeah, he did.
He deserves a bit of love because I've got no doubt he's done it pretty tough. He's got a big contract. I was working with his manager Scott Lucas on radio on Sunday, and he didn't give away anything, but you can read between the lines when it's not easy for a player who's supposed to be in position A and he's in position B. But well done to the big dude.
Look very confident slotting that goal, and some of those centre bounces in the last quarter are really important, and his headouts to advantage.
That reminds me,
the Freo mids.
The last centre bounce was so unfair and so unlucky for St Kilda because it was almost if Patto and I were doing side by side. Now, the ruckman choose to go side by side. Now, people are critical of that, and that's fair enough. But if Patto and I go side by side, it was basically, it's Patto's turn, then it's my turn. It was Link, the umpire, throws it up on Patto's right shoulder. Patto just has to hold his space, knock it down to his rover, and off they go. That's how the last centre bounce played out. Marshall had no chance to get involved in that last ruck contest. Darcy just laid it down the throat of Sarong or Brayshaw, and they got a mark on the wing.
Clean, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's just Marshall had no chance to get involved in the contest. Like, it wasn't a bounce that was bad enough to get recalled, but it was one that gave Marshall no chance. It was just unlucky.
Yep. No, I agree. Anything else we want to raise before we wrap it up?
I think
Harlow,
that's it.
What do you think, Harlow?
Any highlights? We've got 9 games on the slate this week, but as you mentioned, don't look like many will be any good. So we've got the Dogs and Roos kicking us off. The Corns Cup, he's banned from both teams, which will be interesting. Carlton Collingwood doubleheader Friday night.
It's a bit different.
You'll only be the only way you'll watch West Coast and GWS, I reckon, is if you've had a same game multi, because that'll be it'll finish at 11 o'clock and it'll be hard work.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much audience they retain over for the doubleheader. We were trying to figure out why they're doing the doubleheader. Is it? Are they owed Friday night games to Perth?
No, because there's a few in a row, and some aren't. There's a few on the way home. So there's in round 20, there's Essendon Dogs at Marvel, and then a Sydney Showdown at NG Stadium. So there's a kick in the face for the Sydney Showdown. So there's a couple on the way home. I'm wondering whether they're reluctant to have 5 games 4 games on a Saturday maybe. Maybe
Yeah.
they don't want to have that many games on a Saturday, so they try and cram one in a day early. Not sure.
It'll rate higher than a Saturday game. So yeah, maybe it's a.
It'll be
broadcast
Fox only
request.
though. The second that West Coast BWS.
That's true. But I guess Saturday's Fox only anyway. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We'll have to watch the ratings.
Yeah, another thing for us to track down. All right.
Good job. Thanks everybody for
All right,
listening.
mate. Good
Only
work,
one way
Hunts.
to finish. All right. Insert that in, Harlow. All right. Thanks everybody. See you later. See you
Yeah.
next week.